The morning was crisp, the kind of day where ambition and opportunity seem a hum in the air. But as Danielle Parker approached the towering glass building downtown, she felt the familiar weight of being judged before she even spoke a word. She wore a tailored navy suit, heels that clicked with quiet authority, and carried a leather briefcase that had seen boardrooms more times than most people saw the inside of their homes. Yet the security guard at the entrance didn't see any of that. He saw her skin, her natural curls pulled back into a neat bun, and the faint exhaustion of someone who had fought too hard, too long, to be standing where she was now. "Ma'am," the guard said, stepping into her path as if he were shielding the building from her. "This entrance is for employees and tenants only. Deliveries go around the back." His voice was flat but dripping with assumption, his eyes already scanning past her like she was invisible. Danielle stopped, tilting her head slightly, her hazel brown eyes locking onto him with a mixture of disbelief and restrained fire. "I'm not here for delivery," she replied, her voice calm but cutting. "And I don't need the back entrance." The guard smirked, that small, cruel twist of lips that said he had judged her entire worth in a single glance. "Look, I don't know what game you're playing, but I don't have time for this. Tenants don't bring deliveries into the front, and you clearly don't work here." His words landed like tiny, poisonous darts, but Danielle simply tightened her grip on her briefcase. Behind her, a few early morning employees paused to watch, their curiosity buzzing like static in the air. Danielle could feel every pair of eyes pressing against her, the silent question of who she was and why she was being stopped. She had been underestimated before, by professors who didn't think she'd pass law school, by investors who laughed at her pitch, by competitors who dismiss her because of her gender and skin. But something about this moment, this guard, standing like a gatekeeper to what she had fought to build, ignited something deeper. "Step aside," she said firmly. The guard laughed, a sharp, humorless sound that cut through the lobby noise. "Lady, I'm not playing this game. You need to leave before I call the cops." "Don't make me do that." For a split second, Danielle considered just walking past him, but she knew how that would play out. He'd grab her arm, escalate things, and suddenly she'd be the one in the wrong. "No, not today. Not here." Her voice was like steel when she spoke next. "Call whoever you want. In fact, I suggest you call your supervisor. Right now." Something in her tone made him pause. A sliver of doubt flickered in his eyes, but his pride wouldn't let him step back. "Fine," he snapped, grabbing his radio. "Let's see what your story really is." While he muttered into his radio, Danielle stood perfectly still, her face unreadable, but inside, memories crashed against her like waves. Memories of her father telling her she'd have to work twice as hard to get half as far, of being called lucky when she earned her first $1 million, of the tears she cried in silence the day she signed the papers to acquire this very building. A sleek black car pulled up at the curb just then, and out stepped Michael Hayes, the building's operations manager. He froze when he saw Danielle. "Ms. Parker," he said, his voice filled with both surprise and respect. "You're here early. We weren't expecting you until the afternoon." The guard blinked, his face draining of color. "Ms. Parker?" he repeated, turning toward Danielle with confusion. "Yes," Michael continued, walking quickly toward them. Danielle Parker, the new owner and CEO of Parker Holdings. This is her building now. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut glass. The guard's mouth opened and closed, his earlier arrogance collapsing like a house of cards. Danielle didn't say a word, but the look she gave him said everything. Every ounce of humiliation he had tried to project onto her had now flipped back onto him. I didn't know," he stammered. "No," Danielle said quietly. "You didn't care to know." Her voice was soft, but carried the weight of every door ever closed in her face. "You saw what you wanted to see. And that's the problem, isn't it?" Michael cleared his throat. "Would you like me to handle this, Miss Parker?" Danielle took a breath, her anger cooling into something sharper, something almost dangerous. "No," she said. "I'll handle this myself." She stepped closer to the guard, her heels clicking like a countdown. "Here's the thing. You don't just guard this door. You represent this company to everyone who walks through it. And today, you showed me exactly what kind of man you are." The guard swallowed hard, eyes darting nervously between her and Michael. I'm I'm sorry, ma'am. I didn't mean any harm. Intent, Danielle said, means nothing when your assumptions could have cost you your job, or worse, someone's dignity. Think about that the next time you decide who belongs and who doesn't. She walked past him without another word, her presence commanding the space like she'd been born to own it. Employees who had stopped to watch were now whispering in awe, some even smiling as if justice had just been served in the most unexpected way. As the elevator doors closed behind her, Danielle allowed herself the smallest of smiles. It wasn't just about proving him wrong. It was about showing every person watching that power doesn't always look the way you expect. But as the elevator rose to the top floor, her phone buzzed with a message that made her heart pound. It was from her assistant. "We have a problem. There's someone on the board trying to block your first executive order." Danielle's smile faded, her reflection in the elevator doors now showing the face of a woman ready for the next battle. She whispered to herself, "If they think today was a surprise, they haven't seen anything yet." And with that, the doors opened, leaving the question hanging in the air. Who would dare challenge a woman who just took back her power? Danielle Parker stood frozen for a heartbeat, her phone screen glowing like a warning signal. "We have a problem. There's someone on the board trying to block your first executive order." The word sent a cold shiver down her spine. She had barely taken her first steps as CEO, and already the shadows were moving against her. The elevator doors opened with a soft ding, but instead of a usual quiet hum of the top floor, Danielle was met with tense voices. Her assistant, Mia, rushed forward, her usually composed face drawn tight with worry. "Danielle, we need to talk. Right now. It's Thomas Kane. He's rallying votes to overturn your first decision as CEO." Danielle's jaw clenched. Thomas Kane, the former interim CEO, was a man who had always resented her rise. He had been banking on Danielle being just another token appointment, someone who would smile for the cameras but stay silent in the boardroom. But Danielle had already made waves. Her first executive order was to restructure the leadership team, removing the corrupt underlings who had helped Kane bleed the company dry. "What's he planning?" Danielle asked, her voice like ice. Mia lowered her voice. "He's calling an emergency board meeting. He's trying to claim you don't have the authority to push these changes without a unanimous vote. And Danielle, he's bringing evidence." Danielle's brow furrowed. "What kind of evidence?" Mia hesitated, glancing around. "He says he has documents, emails, that paint you as unqualified, even reckless. He claims you lied about your acquisition strategy and that you don't own as many shares as you say you do." Danielle felt the heat rise in her chest, not from fear but from anger. She had spent years building Parker Holdings from the ground up. Every share, every dollar, every contract had her sweat and blood behind it. For Kane to paint her as a fraud was not just an attack on her. It was an attack on everything she represented. "Call the boardroom," Danielle said, her tone unyielding. "Tell them I'll address this head on." Within 20 minutes, Danielle was standing at the head of the long glass table. The board members seated in tense silence. Thomas Kane was there, smug as ever, a silver-haired man in a tailored suit who looked like he had been carved from arrogance itself. "Well," he began, leaning back in his chair, "isn't this a surprise? Our new CEO already making enemies. I told you all this would happen. She doesn't have the experience to lead this company. And now," he slapped a folder down on the table with a theatrical flourish, "we have proof." Danielle didn't flinch. "Go on, Thomas. Let's hear your story." Kane opened a folder and began distributing printed emails. "These," he said with a sly smile, "are from her own team. Emails suggesting that Parker Holdings doesn't actually have controlling interest in this building. That her takeover is, let's say, legally questionable." Murmurs rippled through the room, like a wave of distrust. Danielle took one of the pages, her eyes scanning the words. It was a clever fabrication. Snippets of real conversations mixed with forged statements designed to erode her credibility. This is desperate, even for you, Danielle said, her voice calm but sharp as glass. You expect them to believe this without verifying a single detail? Kane smirked. Why not? After all, you've given them no reason to trust you. You waltz in here, firing people left and right, acting like you own the place. Danielle stepped forward, her heels clicking like a gavel striking order into chaos. I do own the place, and I'll prove it. She pulled out her tablet, connecting it to the boardroom's main screen. Within seconds, a detailed financial report flashed up, complete with timestamps, wire transfers, and signed legal documents that showed Parker Holdings' full acquisition of the building and majority shares in the company. Every penny of this was earned, not inherited, Danielle said, her voice steady. And while you were busy lining your pockets, I was building something real. So the question isn't whether I'm qualified. It's whether this company can survive with people like you clinging to the old ways. For a moment, the room was silent, the board members exchanging uncertain glances. Kane's smirk faltered, but then he leaned forward, his tone dripping with venom. You're good, Danielle, but you're not untouchable. Do you think they know about your brother? Danielle's breath caught in her throat. What did you say? Kane smiled, knowing it struck a nerve. Ah, so they don't know. The scandal with your brother's company? The bankruptcy? The investigation into those missing funds. Mia gasped softly, her hand tightening around a notepad she carried. Danielle's heart pounded. The story was complicated, full of half-truths and misunderstandings. Her brother, Marcus, had been framed years ago during a failed startup, but Kane had access to just enough rumors to twist it into a weapon. You're bluffing, Danielle said, though her voice trembled just slightly. Am I? Kane replied smoothly. I have a file that will destroy you. Unless, of course, you step down. Walk away quietly, and I'll make sure your family's dirty laundry doesn't go public. Danielle felt the weight of every eye in the room pressing on her, waiting for her response. But she wasn't the type to back down. She took a slow breath, the fire in her eyes rekindling. You think fear will win you this war, Thomas? You're wrong. If you want to bring my family into this, then I'll bring yours. Kane's face darkened, his confident mask cracking just slightly. Danielle turned to the board members. You all deserve to know the truth. Thomas Kane has been funneling company funds through shell corporations for years. I have the proof, and I'll present it if I have to. But first, I suggest we audit his financial records. Today, gasps filled the room. Kane shot up from his chair. You're bluffing. Danielle's smile was razor sharp. Try me. Before anyone could speak, Mia's phone buzzed on the table. She looked at the screen, her face draining of color. Danielle, she whispered, you need to see this. Mia turned the phone around. A breaking news alert glowed on the screen. Federal investigators raid Parker Holdings subsidiary. Allegations of fraud and insider trading surface. The room erupted into chaos. Board members shouted over one another, Kane grinning like a predator who had just drawn blood. Danielle stood frozen, the world tilting beneath her feet. She had never heard of such an investigation. But someone was moving fast, someone who wanted her gone before she could cement her power. Kane leaned in, his voice a whisper only she could hear. Looks like your empire isn't as clean as you think. Welcome to the real fight. Danielle clenched her fists, forcing herself to stay calm even as the boardroom became a storm of accusations and fear. She knew this wasn't just corporate sabotage. This was war. And somewhere out there, someone was pulling strings to destroy everything she had built. But as she lifted her head and met Kane's smug gaze, a plan was already forming in her mind. Enjoy your victory lap, Thomas, she said quietly, because when I find out who's behind this, I will burn your entire empire to ground. The room fell silent as Danielle walked out, her heels striking like war drums, every step echoing the promise of fight that was only beginning. Outside the boardroom, Mia ran after her, breathless. Danielle, what are we going to do? Danielle paused at a window overlooking the city, her reflection staring back at her, a woman forged by every battle she'd ever fought. We find the traitor, she said, and when we do, they'll wish they'd never heard my name. But even as she spoke, a shadowy figure in the building across the street watched her through binoculars, speaking into a phone. Phase 2 is complete. She won't see Phase 3 coming. To be continued. Subscribe and follow for Part 2.